man. Hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte, and we are here live at the Build Studio in New York City. In the closing moments of Cobra Kai Season 1, fans were thrilled with the arrival of one of the most iconic, most quoted 80s villains of all time. Season 2 pulled the curtain back a little on John Kreese, and thanks to a phenomenal performance from our next guest, we continue to love to hate this guy. The show's been renewed for Season 3, which is great because I can't wait to see where he takes Kreese next. Folks, put your hands together, show no mercy, and sweep the leg because Martin Kove is in the building. How you guys feel about that? You excited at home? I'm excited. They're excited. You should better be excited. All right, we're going to bring them out in just a second, but first, we got a really cool video from the Cobra Kai team, so let's go ahead and run that clip.
War never ends. Peace is just the lull between battles. The real story's only just begun.
You want to finish this?
Bring it on.
Ladies and gentlemen, make a crazy amount of noise. The great Martin Kove sitting right over here. Man himself. I am so excited you're here, man. Congratulations. Not just on Season 2, but Season 3. That's huge. That's wonderful news. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just, wallowing in the success of this show and how surprising it is that, well, I'm not really surprised because it's written so well.
It is. It really is written very, very well. I think that's a huge part of it. Is right now in a time where a lot of people are rebooting and retrying and all these different things. One of the things that this team has nailed is the storytelling, is the way the characters are treated, and you guys get a chance to come back and breathe life back into this franchise. It's such a cool. Even as a Karate Kid fan, it's amazing, and as a new fan, it's just a great show to watch. It's got to be a really exciting time for you guys putting this all together, seeing everybody again.
Well, you think it's such a phenomenon that 35 years later, the same people are working together that worked on these hit movies, and it's really great, and the angles that they've thought of, because these three writers, Josh Heald and you've met them, and John Hurwitz and Hayden Schlossberg, they saw the movie when they were 6 years old. So they've been thinking about this for a long time.
Their whole lives.
And this is their Star Wars. And the fact that when you meet them and they tell you, well, we want you to come in episode 10 and you'll set up Season 2, and you say, well, why can't I come in episode 6?
They were telling me about that.
Right, I'm sure. And because they're great guys. I mean, the reason why we all, we're all there, aside that, we love working, but the bottom line is, they're very perceptive, and they're really smart. And whatever they say really happens, and they say, we're going to write your character with a multiple amount of colors and texture, and they do it. And when they say there's surprises for Season 3, you believe there's surprises for Season 3. So they're great. And working with Billy is great, and working with Ralph is great. We just have a really good time. It's hard, but we have a good time.
There's a lot I want to get into in there and dissect and pick out. But first, I love the idea that when they got you involved, you were ready to go. Why can't I be in 5 or 6? They were like, no, you're going to wait till 10. How did they ultimately convince you that that you got to hang in there, you got to wait till 10? And then what was it like for you having to sit back and wait all this time? You couldn't tell anybody. You had to keep that secret.
It was miserable. I had to bite my tongue, literally, no matter where. If you do a convention or if you do some press event of any kind, people would come up to you and they heard about the show and they said, you're going to be in the show, aren't you? And I said, no. He said, well, what has happened to John Kreese in 30 years? Something has happened. You've got to be in there. And I said, no, he's working for the KGB. He's in prison. He's working for the CIA, whatever. Nobody believed me, but you couldn't tell the truth. I sworn to be quiet until May 2nd from the time I signed on, which was like November, all the way through till May 2nd when the show aired last year. And it was hard. It's very, very hard. And so now, now you can do press. I don't suffer from that anymore. And they did what they said. They wrote the character with lots of colors, and I like doing that more than playing the John Kreese that from 1984.
Yeah.
you know.
Well, that's what's so exciting about it is we're not just getting to see John Kreese again, but the way these guys write, we're getting to see so many different facets and sides to these characters that we had no idea or never really got a chance to see before. Did you, we're only getting to see them now on screen, but did you as an actor, as a performer, internalize or think of any of these different things before, when you were creating John, when you were coming up with why John is the way he is, before these guys had their versions of the answers, did you have your own answers? And, did you guys have to kind of put those two together and figure out where John goes now?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of that because they're very astute. And they are creating. So you have to remember, we'll go to work in season 2. In season 2, all the episodes are overwritten in the sense of that was just very exciting and it's hard to do in the amount of time that you have to do. And Billy and I would complain and we say, well, we got to get up this early. We got to do episode 4 pickups from while you're shooting episode 8. And 3 when you're shooting episode 7, and it's hard. But you could never complain because all, John, Josh, and Hayden, they were directing, they were rewriting, they were editing, they were producing, they were doing everything more than we were doing. So as actors, you take it, and the material that was coming out was so rich and so interesting that they wrote what I was thinking. I would bring in my notes from working with Army Rangers to talk about Vietnam. They already had this. They already had the thoughts in their head. And that was for season 2. So, everything you perceive, they are ahead of you. Yeah. They're that smart. They're just smart guys. And they know film left and right, me, I love Westerns. And, I took them to see Ennio Morricone at the Gene Autry Museum to see and listen to all his music, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Fistful of Dollars, all that. And, they are into that as much as they're into Star Wars. They're just great guys to work for because they call themselves nerds. I don't call them nerds. Yeah. But they're 40-year-old children who love cinema. I'm a 72-year-old guy who loves cinema, so.
Put it together, you got a beautiful thing you guys made together.
Yeah.
Working with Billy again, coming back into this world, is it weird? Well, not is it weird. Just what's it like in general to re-enter this universe as these characters and now to work with him as an adult and work with him almost as an equal in a way? And guys, what's that like versus how you remember it 30 years ago?
Well, it happens in the backstory because you have to remember John Kreese enters this game because he loves Johnny Lawrence. And he was the father figure Johnny Lawrence had 30 years ago. Where he's been for the last 30 years, he just tells the story, and Johnny believes him for a while. But the most important thing here is that there's one thing that John Kreese loves more than Johnny Lawrence is Cobra Kai. The integrity of something that he created years ago, and he vowed that the integrity of Cobra Kai would never be violated. And the bottom line is, if you've seen season 2, it's violated. And what happens is I don't want to spoil for people who haven't seen it, but he encounters a way to literally correct the misunderstood Johnny Lawrence. Yeah. And it's fascinating because those two elements drive this character, and they wrote about that, and I thought about that. So it's really fascinating to know that all these people who are directing you and editing and giving you dialogue about story are truthful and sincere and honest, which is a rarity in Sodom and Gomorrah, where I live,
You have, I was looking at your IMDb page, and you have a prolific career, sir. I was blown away. 230 or 60 some odd credits on your IMDb page, which was incredible to me. You're breathing rare air. Not a lot of people have maintained that level of consistency, and you have worked every year that I can see since you've started in the industry. You read this list, and it appears, from an outsider's perspective, that there hasn't really been a lull. What have you done as a performer? What has dictated your choices over these years? How have you stayed consistently on screen, consistently working? What has driven you all this time?
the roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
And the thirst to just do better work, because I was at the Hoboken Film Festival here, and they gave me an award, the Hall of Fame award, in Greenwood Lake, beautiful spot, and they showed a reel from 1974 all the way to now, and I looked at some of that stuff and I said, "Oh God, it's so embarrassing." I mean, some of this movie, Death Race 2000, this movie I did.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a classic. I mean, I'd like to hide that classic. Like Paul Newman tried to buy from Warner Brothers The Silver Chalice, a movie that he made in '53. He was so embarrassed. There's a lot of those out there, and the work changes. It just changes. I remember I did a play, Burn This, and Ed Harris came. We were all in the same theater group. And he came to me, and I'll never forget, this is about 20 years ago. He and Amy Madigan came, and they came to see Burn This, and Sam Shepard play. And I said, "Ed, did you like it? Did you like it?" And he says, "I like the quiet moments." Right? Because there was 5 quiet moments. Everybody else was acting their ass off, It's a 3-character piece, and we're acting our ass off, and the director loved it when we were screaming at one another. Had nothing to do with reality, with making the words your own. It just had to do with screaming. And you can look back at it now, and you say, well, you just had to, you had to just graduate to certain levels, and that's why I keep on the pace, because you watch Steve McQueen in The Blob, and then you watch Steve McQueen in Thomas Crown Affair. It's 2 different actors. You look at him in Magnificent Seven a year later, and then you look at him, in Enemy of the People, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Can you only, through time and through experience and through perspective, be able to look at something like Burn This and go, "Oh, I see why he said that"? Like in that moment when you're out there acting your ass off, are you aware that you're creating this experience for Ed Harris, or do you guys think we're acting our asses off? We are crushing this show. Like what are you thinking in that moment?
Well, it's interesting. That's really a good question. When you're doing it now, and you take the time more in making the words your own. The acting now is different. It's different now than, the stoic John Kreese 30 years ago. There wasn't much direction from John Avildsen. It was just no smiling, no Marty Cove twinkle, just death, And that's all would ring, in my head. And I look back at it this season while shooting, and I look back at the scenes, and it looked like John Kreese was just as emotional whether his kids won or lost. There wasn't much change in his personality or his expressions, and I realized that. And so that was a man who ultimately was in a different emotional position than 30 years later, where the human being grew, the actor grew, and now it's 2018, and we're doing this character. So I grew as an actor, thank God. And yet that performance was okay because it was really one-dimensional. But there are a lot of things I did in that period of time where I remember acting. And the movie Steel Justice, I remember some great moments and some poor moments, all in that period of time. I see these Cagney and Lacey episodes, and you look at where I would rush. I could see rushing the lines, but I didn't know it when I was doing it, Yeah, and now I think it's just getting older and choosing the material more seriously.
Did you feel at all coming back to this character that has never left you? You did it 30 years ago, but people still yelling, "Sweep the leg," still yelling, "No mercy." Did you feel at all not a pressure, but a responsibility coming back to Kreese? Were you excited? I get to show these different sides of Kreese, but I hope the fans that have followed all this year like it too. Do you take any of that into consideration when you have a character that is so, I want to say beloved, but you know what I mean? When you have an iconic character and you're being asked to reprise this role, what do you think prior to bringing him back to life? Does any of that factor in?
Well, I think it's moment by moment. You don't think of the whole picture. And Billy and I have talked about this a great deal, where we never like what we look like on film. We don't like what we sound like on film. But all you can do is play moment to moment as you go through it. And the overall picture, you probably, if you had the time, you could look at it all. If you could read all 10 scripts at the same time, meaning, one right after another, and have them in enough an advanced period where you could see the arc of your character. But so many times doing a TV show, you'll get the script 2 weeks advance, maybe. And you're seeing arcs to the character that are just moments away. You're in front of the camera doing it. So the big picture comes now, I think, when we see the success of this character, the success of the series, and you know that now you can, it's a new life. Because John Kreese is a different character now than he was back in 1984. And that's a luxury, to just create where you've been for 30 years, have the time now, and then the audience gets to play with you when the writers reveal where you've been. Because you talk about it. So to answer your question, it really is moment by moment for me. The overall arc is a luxury if you can have it, if you can have the overall arc. But it's hard. It's tough.
Have they? We saw the announcement for season 3. We're very excited for season 3. Have you guys started work on it at all yet, or is it just right now? John and the guys are figuring it out. Have you had any conversations about season 3? Do you know anything that you can tease?
Do I know anything?
I don't want you to spoil.
I can't tease you. I can't spoil you because I don't know very much.
I haven't told you anything.
I mean, they're great. They have a couple of references. I probably, from what I see, and this is not even part of them, that Allie probably will come back.
Yep, we saw that. That's exciting.
And I saw her a couple of times in talk shows. She couldn't keep a secret. I could read her face. I had
what that's like.
I had to do it for 9 months. And she was giggling and laughing. So but that'll be interesting because I think the interesting thing about that, I don't think it's going to affect me very much. But I think what's going to affect is the drama between Ralph and Billy, between Johnny Lawrence and Daniel LaRusso, of how they're going to deal with Allie coming back. And that's going to be great drama, not only for the rivalry of the two, but great drama because he's in a relationship and he's married, and Billy's down and out at this point. And I can't imagine how John Kreese would affect that, but that will be a challenge in the writing.
It's such a great sandbox. Could you ever have imagined 30 years ago when you were working with these kids and making this movie that 30 years later, man, I mean, obviously nobody could possibly fathom it, but it's just so amazing to see this world that's so ripe for all these great stories that you guys get to play in now. It's really cool. It's really cool.
Well, I think, the good thing is that these characters, the writers never planned for this to be a sequel. It was never going to be Karate Kid 4. It was always going to be about the lives of the people all these years later. Plus, and I've said this many times, this is like the old Ed Sullivan show. This is something that the whole family can get around the TV and watch. If you're into action and violence, if you're into love, if you're into family, if you're into karate, if you're into just the integrity of martial arts, you can just literally watch this show and come away with something altogether. It doesn't happen much anymore.
We're going to go in just 1 second. We've got a couple of comments and questions from Twitter and from our audience here, but there's one thing I really wanted to ask you about because it's also very exciting. Tarantino's latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you were just working on that. That's pretty freaking cool. That's a neat thing to do. Keep me honest, is that your first time working with Tarantino?
Well, I've known him,
known
for a while. I mean, he knows, you see, you're talking about another icon that knows everybody's resume. So he knows everybody, I would say indirectly, he knows everybody. He knows what every actor has ever done anywhere. He can name situations where you guest starred on a Quincy or a Rockford Files. Wow. He said to me that you did the Rockford Files, and I said, yeah. He said, and he cited the Virginian, which is probably 10 years earlier than the Rockford Files, how the Rockford Files recycled a Virginian episode. So one circa 1977, Virginian 65, 66. He knew 10 years later that Rockford Files was based on a Virginian episode from the mid-'60s.
Did you know that?
I know. I mean, I'm good at Westerns. It's my genre, but Quentin knows everything. And he's great to work for because it's like working for a big kid.
Yeah.
And I just, I always wanted to work with him, and I drove him crazy. And, he was a fan. And then when I got the job, I said, at the party, I said, Quentin, did you give me this role because I've been driving you crazy for 3 years to be in Django and Hateful Eight, or because I'm hot from Cobra Kai? And he paused and he said, a little bit of both.
Straight shooter.
Yeah, straight shooting. A lot of fun.
I just noticed the second time, though, you've described working with somebody as like a big kid. You described the guys that way on Cobra Kai. You described Quentin that way. Is that an energy that you're looking for these days at this point where you're like, that's the kind of person I want to work with, someone who is in love with what we're doing and is just having fun with it?
It's a lot more, it's more comfortable to do that.
Yeah.
I was at the premiere of John Wick.
John Wick, yeah.
The new one. And I'm just standing there, they're taking pictures, and a guy taps me on the shoulder. I turn around, and he's wearing a black sweater and tie and suit jacket. And he says, "Hi, I just binged Cobra Kai all day today, and you were great, and I love the show." And I said, "Oh, really? What do you do here?" And he says, "I directed this movie." So Chad directed this picture. And we started talking about just other movies that we liked. And I said, I'm here basically because I did a lot of action pictures, and I hear Keanu does a lot of his stuff, and like Tom Cruise, I'd be interested to see it. Bottom line was, he made lots of references to different movies, paid homage to Casablanca, pays homage to The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, to Blade Runner, to The Wild Bunch. And he says, we got to talking, and he says, you go and come to me in the after party and tell me if you can spot all those homages, And that's the kind of filmmaker you like, because they go back to that era of perfection when filmmaking was, when they turned out 500 movies a year, when they turned out pictures that were, there was 9 writers writing for Cary Grant, writing for Humphrey Bogart. There was just a more focus on, even though they were, they were notorious men back there, Jack Warner and Harry Cohn and all that. They loved filmmaking. They were businessmen, but they loved filmmaking, and that was their true love, as well as making money.
All right, I've got to go over to the audience questions. I'm eating up all the time here. I apologize. This first one, this is great. This is from at Jesse Kove. Says, all caps, Dad, I love you. That's just sweet. Thank you, Jesse, for reaching out. Very nice.
Thank you, my boy. He's the best boy there is, the very best boy.
I think it's the first time we've had that. That's very sweet. Next one is an actual question, I think. This is from at Alicia Marie, and says, have you ever said anything to Billy that's made you want to apologize in between takes? Great question.
Apologize. That's really interesting to apologize, because I have to qualify that. Billy should have gotten an Emmy last year, because Billy's work was it was just so far out there, in and out of emotions, left and right. And I don't think YouTube knew what to do with such a successful show and such a successful performance at that point. But have I ever said anything to apologize? I don't think I ever have, because Billy's been in the moment, and working together, we have such a good time. Yeah. And, we do a lot of laughing, and we do an awful lot of emoting, because, to be perfectly honest, my favorite stuff comes with Billy. I love working with Ralph. I've only done 2 scenes with Ralph, but with Billy, I do a lot. And I really love working with both of them, because all of us can't phone in a performance to each other. Maybe some of the kids, you can just get in the moment, but we have to really stay with each other. Otherwise, the other actor is going to walk all over you. And so, no, I don't think I've ever apologized, darling. But
great question. Thank
Great
you, Alicia
question.
Marie. I've got two in the room, Kate. Perfect. Two questions in the room with microphones. First one, I see you have a microphone. Let's go for it.
Hi, how are you? I was just wondering if you guys had a set date for season 3 yet?
Season 3, we begin shooting approximately August 20th. And that's about a month earlier than we did the last time, which means hopefully it'll be on at least a month earlier, come on maybe March of next year, which isn't that far away. But we'll shoot for, 3 months, and it's in Atlanta. And it's a gas. I mean, it's really fun to shoot there, and we have sound stages built, and
Do you have to, do you personally, I mean, I think I was seeing you have 3 black belts. Do you do any kind of like physical preparation leading up to a season shoot? Do you start training in any specific way, preparing, or are you kind of at this point, you're ready to go? You
no,
walk in.
you're never ready to go.
Never ready to go.
Never ready to go. They told me one thing, the writers, they said there's going to be a huge fight. And that was directed at me. They didn't tell me anything else. So if you've seen season 2, that last episode, that's almost 15 minutes long. I can't imagine there being on television in a 30-minute show a bigger fight than that. So, and the fight at the beginning from episode 1 was a lot of work. And we worked in L.A., Billy and I, for about a month on it, and then we worked there. But there's never enough time to do fight scenes. That's what I said to Chad on John's Wick. I said, how much rehearsal time do you get? And he says, well, how much do you get? And I said, we don't get very long. He says, you get about 10 minutes, right? Because he's a big fan of the show. Yeah. And then I said, yeah, probably about 10 minutes to do a fight rehearsal. And I said, how much time do you get? He says, well, on this one, we were lucky. We got 6 months. Oh, my God. 6 months. Do you know how cool that is?
It's so cool.
So yes, I go. I work in the dojo and I work out, and we have someone here we work with, Simon Ree, who's terrific in L.A. And then I work with, I used to work with my Shion was Takaboda, Shion Takaboda, and then we work with the stunt quarters down there, and they're great. They do Stranger Things is also Ito and his wife Janelle. They're great. They won an Emmy last year for the action.
Amazing. Kate, do I have time for one more? Yes, I've got one more question. Let's go for it. Come on down.
Hi. This is an online question from our website, buildseries.com. Do you remember your initial audition for Karate Kid way back when? Or if you didn't audition, do you remember what it was like to read the script for the first time?
That's a good question. I remember it vividly. I've told this story a few times. They gave me a script, and are you an actress? Yeah. So they give you a script, and she says the next day, her name is Carol Jones, next day, you have it all week, and they'll probably meet you on Friday. That was Monday. Tuesday morning, I get a call. John Avildsen wants to see you on the set at noon. I said, but you said I have all week to practice. Hadn't looked at it. And it was a scene, Mercy is for the Weak, marching through the aisles. Mercy is for the weak, here and on the streets, blah, blah. So I'm just so angry. And my wife at the time says, use that venom you feel and do those lines. Mercy is for the weak, here and on the streets. An enemy confronts you, blah, blah. I said, okay. And I went there, and I had to get pumped up. In order to get pumped up to that energy level, I said, you're a real asshole, John Avildsen. You're a real asshole too, Caro Jones. We wait as actors. We fire our managers, fire our agents to meet directors of your caliber, and you don't even give us time to prepare the work. Mercy is for the weak. I went right into it. While I'm screaming at this guy, I went right into that. Wow. He loved it. Send me to Jerry Weintraub. Jerry Weintraub stopped me halfway through. This is a veteran producer. Did Oh God, lots of stuff. Stopped me halfway through, he says, you're perfect. Sent me to Guy McElwain, the head of the studio. I couldn't do it because he wasn't there, but I did the scene with Pat Morita and screamed and yelled at everybody in the bathroom. Came right out and did the scene. And the rest was history. I got the part. But anyway, the moral of the story, is a very long capsule version, is like, if they don't hire you, you got to remember it's their mistake, because your dream will come true in due time. Things will materialize as long as you keep your dreams right up there. Don't ever let the dreams go.
It's great advice. Great question. Thank you so much. We got to wrap things up.
Sorry for these long answers, but
No, it's beautiful.
I get so passionate with this stuff when it's good.
This is exactly what this show is for. It's for stories just like that. Martin, I had so much fun with you here, man. I got to wrap things up, but thank you so much for coming through. I hope you had a good time too. Awesome.
I love your shoes, man.
Oh, thanks, man. I love everything about you and all the work you've done, so it evens out. Guys, we're going to wrap things up, but I'll remind you right now, if you haven't yet, if you got to go watch Cobra Kai Season 1 and 2, all right? And if you have watched them, then join me and be very excited because Season 3 is on the way. Also, keep an eye out for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And you have literally 20 other projects that are upcoming on your IMDb. You have been a very busy man. Come back for any one of those when they release and hang out with us for a little bit. Ladies and gentlemen,
great. Thank you.
Please make a crazy amount of noise. How great is he? Martin Kove right here. Do it up.